Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. We're diving right into this week's Buyreta research update. We've combed through the noise, pulling directly from peer-reviewed sources and clinical trial registries to bring you the absolutely most important peptide and metabolic compound studies of the week. Look, if you follow the bleeding edge of metabolic medicine, you already know this landscape shifts literally every single day. Today, we're looking at a massive regulatory earthquake in the compounding world, and we're diving deep into the clinical data that is completely taking over the conversation right now. We're going to separate the internet hype from the hard published science. So, let's get into it.
Here is a quick look at our agenda. We're covering the FDA's sudden compounding reversal, a reality check on the famous BPC-17, Eli Lilly's blockbuster retatrutide trial results, and finally, how to navigate this wild peptide landscape. All right, Part 1, the 2026 FDA Peptide Reclassification. We are talking about a seismic shift in compounding regulations here.
Talk about regulatory whiplash, right? Just look at this timeline. Back in 2022, the World Anti-Doping Agency just outright banned compounds like BPC-157 for athletes. Then, fast forward to 2023, the FDA hits them with Category 2 restrictions, citing significant safety concerns and effectively yanking them from licensed compounding pharmacies. But then, out of nowhere, we get a massive reversal from the HHS in February 2026. And now, as of April 2026, the formal FDA process has officially begun to restore legal pathways for 14 specific peptides. It's been a total roller coaster.
So, what does this actually look like in practice? As you can see in this breakdown, we've got a deeply divided list. On the left side, fan favorites like BPC-157, TB500, and CJC-1295 are back in Category 1. That means patients can once again legally get pharmaceutical-grade versions from a licensed compounding pharmacy, provided they have a doctor's prescription. But on the flip side, compounds like the myostatin inhibitor follistatin 344 and cerebrolysine, those remain strictly restricted from the pharmacy pipeline.
But here is the absolutely crucial point, and you really need to hear this if you rely on these compounds. This reclassification, it is not a blank check. Yes, access is temporarily restored, but these are still not FDA-approved drugs. They are facing a formal, highly public reckoning at the FDA's advisory committee hearings this July. The clinical use cases, the safety data, all of it is going to be intensely debated. So mark your calendars for July 2026, because those hearings are going to dictate long-term access for sure.
Moving on to Section 2, BPC-157, Hype versus Evidence. Let's do a much-needed reality check on the so-called Wolverine peptide.
Okay, the contrast on this slide is honestly staggering. Look at this. We have this incredible, massive foundation of animal data. Over 100 studies spanning 30 years showing accelerated tendon healing, gut repair, nerve regeneration. I mean, honestly, if you're a lab rat, this stuff is basically a miracle drug. But for humans, there is a shocking lack of high-quality trials. As of right now, there are only 3 published pilot studies in humans, and randomized placebo-controlled trials, 0. Absolutely none.
30. Literally just 30. Take a second to let that number sink in. Across all officially published scientific literature, fewer than 30 human subjects have been evaluated for BPC-157. Meanwhile, there are thousands and thousands of biohackers, athletes, and just regular patients creating their own protocols and sharing them online every single day. This number perfectly highlights the totally unregulated global folk pharmacology experiment that's currently happening on the internet.
Well, what do those 30 people tell us? The tiny sliver of human data we actually do have is surprisingly encouraging. We've seen 80 to 100% symptom resolution in a pilot study for interstitial cystitis. 16 patients reported significant relief for knee pain at the 6 to 12 month mark. And we've seen good short-term IV tolerance up to 20 milligrams. So the big takeaway here is that short-term tolerance seems totally fine, and there are very real therapeutic signals. But the catch? Optimal dosing, drug interactions, and, crucially, long-term safety, those are still complete mysteries.
And that glaring lack of long-term data brings us perfectly to this quote from Stanford neurobiologist Dr. Andrew Huberman. He warns that you simply cannot remove the pleiotropic feature of peptides. What does that mean? It means a single peptide activates entirely different biological pathways depending on what specific tissue it bumps into or even what time of day it is. You might inject it hoping to heal a torn tendon, but it's simultaneously interacting with your gut, your immune system, or potentially even cellular growth pathways. You just can't isolate a single effect. It's the whole shebang.
All right, Section 3, Retatrutide's Phase 3 Triumph. Let's step out of the compounding gray market for a second and look at a heavily funded pharmaceutical breakthrough.
The absolute drug of the hour right now is Eli Lilly's retatrutide. This isn't just another weight loss drug. It is a triple hormone receptor agonist. So you know how famous drugs like Ozempic target just one pathway, GLP-1? Well, retatrutide is a single engineered molecule that hits 3 separate metabolic pathways simultaneously: GIP, GLP-1, and glucagon. It's a massive pharmaceutical innovation, a real game changer. And the human data backing this up, it's nothing short of incredible. The phase 3 results from the TRIUMPH-4 trial are just staggering. Check this out. At 68 weeks, participants on the 12 milligram dose lost an average of almost 29% of their body weight. 29%! But it's not even just about the weight loss. This trial showed a massive reduction in severe osteoarthritis pain scores, almost 76% lower. In fact, more than 1 in 8 patients became completely free from knee pain by the end of the trial. This is the kind of rock-solid proof you get when you monitor thousands of human subjects.
But, there's always a trade-off. Whenever you have a compound this powerful that dramatically alters human biology, things can happen. Analysts monitoring the trial noted a new safety signal popping up called dysesthesia. Basically, that's an abnormal and sometimes really uncomfortable sense of touch. It's just a sobering reminder that even with billions of dollars in funding and massive clinical oversight, manipulating these deep metabolic pathways carries very real risks that we're only just starting to understand.
Which brings us to our final section, navigating the peptide landscape. Let's synthesize what all of this means for the future of healing.
We are essentially navigating a split reality right now. On one side, you've got compounded peptides like BPC 157. Access is temporarily back, meaning you can get pharmaceutical purity through legit pharmacies again. But the human data is super thin, it's mostly anecdotal, and everything hinges on those FDA hearings in July 2026. Then, on the other side of the aisle, you've got pharmaceutical peptides like retatrutide. These are backed by massive, rigorous clinical trials and robust safety monitoring. But the downside? They are tightly controlled, narrowly prescribed, and insanely expensive. So, I want to leave you with a question to chew on as you review the research this week. As the FDA cracks the door back open for tissue repair compounding, while Big Pharma simultaneously shatters records for metabolic weight loss and joint pain, what does this actually mean for us? Are we stepping into a golden age of human tissue and metabolic healing where we have total control over our biology? Or are we just boldly navigating a wild new frontier of unknown long-term risks? It's a lot to think about. Keep reading the studies, always talk to your board-certified physicians, and stay focused on the data. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you guys next time.